Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Orbit Football Podcast. You're joining myself, Cade, as well as Tyler and Blake once again. We're going to do our preview show here for week number 9. Can't believe we're already that deep into the season, but let's waste no time, jump right into it. Bit of a weaker schedule this week. You can also kind of get that from the picks that we're going to have today, but let's jump right into it. Game of the week, arguably in a lot of senses. A lot of eyes are around this game this week because of the circumstances of one particular team, and that's the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia comes into this one ranked number 1 by AP standards. Tyler and I both have them at 2 and 3, respectively. Georgia, obviously the back-to-back national champions, looking to be the first, really, in the modern era of college football to make a three-peat. They are dealing with Brock Bowers' injury. He's out this game. Florida's coming off of a big win on the road against South Carolina in October. So, both these teams both have a bye week, have an extra week to prepare for this game. World's greatest outdoor cocktail party, as they call it down there in Jacksonville. But Tyler, I'll ask you first. What are your initial thoughts heading into this game this weekend?
So this is going to be the first week for Georgia, especially going without Brock Bowers. It's going to be interesting to see how the offense is going to perform because, when we look at this Georgia offense, it's been Carson Beck, quarterback. He's been fine. He's made the plays when he's needed to, but the plays have all went to Brock Bowers and really no one else. Brock Bowers has been this complete offense. So, is Georgia going to be able to find another guy to be able to step up in the receiving room or maybe even in the tight end room? Who knows? That's I think that's the biggest question. I think a lot of people really aren't giving Florida a chance in this game, but I think that Florida, who knows, they could just play outstanding defense and just limit this Georgia offense because Georgia, they haven't stepped up outside of Brock Bowers, so it's going to be an interesting game. I think that's the biggest key of this game to see what Georgia can do without him. But when we look at offense versus defense, I think. The field position game is going to be important. Georgia offensively, 109th in the country offensively. And starting field position, Florida, 126th defensively. So who wins that matchup? Both pretty bad in those respected areas. But I think also another point, Florida on third down is going to have to be really good. Florida, not great. Especially offensively on early down or not early downs, but third down. Georgia very good defensively on third down, so one of those is going to have to change, and I think Florida obviously, putting Graham Mertz in easier situations is going to be their way to win. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I think Georgia has way too much talent. I think that Georgia is going to end up trying to make a statement here. I don't think they're going to find that guy that's going to be able to step up. But I don't think they're going to have to because I think they're going to be able to run the ball very well, and I think that they're gonna make Graham Mertz have some decisions to make. He's gonna have to get the ball out quick. For Florida, if they can try to find a run game, that would be good. We've seen what some teams have been able to do to Georgia on the ground, but I just don't think Florida's gonna be a team that's gonna be able to take advantage of that. And with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pick Georgia to win this game pretty easily. I'm gonna go 31-13. I think the Bulldogs going to be able to put the Gators down a little bit easy.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points there, Tyler, with when it comes to Georgia and maybe not needing somebody to step up really in this game. But Blake, I'll turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'm looking at this one really similar to Tyler here. This is a pretty good matchup for Georgia in my eyes. Georgia, obviously, yeah, they've had offensive struggles this year at times. They've leaned on Brock Bowers heavily, who they're going to be without for the foreseeable future, if not the rest of the season, which is unfortunate for them. Uh, but when I'm looking at it, Florida's defense has been respectable at times against the run, but at other times they've just been steamrolled. You look at that Kentucky game; they got absolutely steamrolled there. Georgia, we know their offense for the past several years has relied on running the football. This year they've put it through the air more. They trust Carson Beck. I think they trust Carson Beck for a reason. He's had an impressive season so far in his first starting campaign. I'm just not really seeing much of a path for Florida to move the football well enough on this Georgia defense, though. That's what I'm kind of seeing as the key. Florida's offense is not going to have what it takes to keep them in this game, I don't think. Florida isn't going to see it. They're not going to run the football on Georgia's front, and their offense is heavily relied on getting the ball out quick. Graham Mertz going a lot of screens, a lot of quick passing routes, and receivers making plays after the catch. Uh, Georgia's not going to allow that. Their secondary is secure as tacklers, especially. They're not going to allow many missed tackles. They're not going to allow broken tackles, and they're not really going to get beat over the top on the occasions that has happened. Florida's looked at Ricky Pearsall as kind of a deep threat, take the top off the defense kind of guy at times this year. Georgia's not really going to allow that either. Their defense is, not what it's been the last 2 years, certainly, but it's still a very solid unit. It's not one that's going to be prone to making a lot of mistakes. And they're not a defense that's prone to giving up plays in the standard rushing game. You get into some zone reads. Sure, there can be they can be had there, but is Graham Mertz going to really pull out the zone read game and keep the football in his own hands? At times this weekend, it's possible. It's possible, but I don't think it's going to happen realistically. It hasn't been Florida's game all year. I don't see that they're going to change that this week. Their offense is just not going to be good enough to keep them in this game. I think they're going to be kept in their own territory a lot. I think they're going to give Georgia some pretty decent starting field position a lot of the day. And I think Georgia's going to find a pretty solid running game on this Florida front because they have had their struggles, certainly. So I've got Georgia winning this one here, 29-13. I got them taking back the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
Yeah, I think I'm agree with both of you guys here. We all have Georgia, just to give a little hint of what I've got in this game. But I just if this game was not after a bye for Georgia, then maybe I'd feel a little bit more concerned for them. But because they have an extra week off, because they have an extra week to sit there and say, okay, we're going to be without Brock for most of, if not the rest of the regular season. So what do we got to do? They're going to make some adjustments, and obviously one of the adjustments that I think that they're going to make, specifically in this Florida game, is they're going to run the football. Florida, obviously well noted that their game against Kentucky, they got ran all over by Ray Davis, and I think that Georgia's going to try to do the exact same thing here. Georgia has the athletes. They haven't really, obviously they've been that running team, but have switched over to a passing team mainly this year because of Brock and because of Carson Beck. But I wouldn't be surprised if they ran the ball, 30 plus times in this game, just to hammer the run. And maybe we'll get a new facet of this Georgia team that we'll see that they're going to try to do over the next couple of weeks. Maybe they're going to be a team that's going to try to run the ball consistently and with success. And I think we might see a glimpse of that in this game. Obviously it's a rivalry matchup. Graham Mertz, he's put up fantastic numbers this year with, as Blake mentioned, Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall's had a great year. One of the more underrated solid receivers in college football this year, but I don't think that they have enough in this game. I think that Georgia just has the talent, and I think the talent's going to show in this game. Both of you do not have Georgia or do not have Florida covering in this game, but I do. By literally a half a point in this game, I have them covering. I just think that Florida could get up kind of early in this game, but Georgia's going to sit there and they're going to do something similar to what they've done to Auburn and to South Carolina, and that was sit there and they're going to suffocate you in the second half. It's a very similar thing to what Bama's done this year, where they've just kind of sat there, they've been down in the first half, and then the second half they come back and they bounce back, and it's a totally different football team that we see out there because that's what good coaching staffs do. And I think we're going to see that from Georgia this weekend. I don't know if they're going to get down too much, maybe a touchdown or so, maybe a field goal. Something might happen there, but I think Georgia's going to do that, and then they're going to come out in the second half and absolutely dominate that game. I got this one 34-20. I think Georgia's going to win this one out there in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party for that rivalry matchup. And now we've got another very interesting matchup on the docket here for this game. And these two teams have had some history in recent years, and the one that's been usually the team that's been home has won this game, and that's Oregon and Utah. Utah is coming off of a big win against USC. They've got the announcement that that Cam Rising is out for the rest of the year. So I don't know. We'll see what happens in this game. But Tyler, I'll ask you first. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this game is going to be interesting because obviously Utah, I think a lot of people weren't expecting them to win last week, but they did. They beat USC. I picked that very blindly, but I picked it somehow. And I think this week I'm going to be picking against them because this seems like a horrible matchup for Utah. I think the only thing going for Utah right now is that their defense is obviously elite nationally, and they are at home in a very well-respected home environment. But I think Oregon's going to be too much. I think Oregon, they are both sound on offense and defense. I think Utah is going to have a tough time moving the ball here. I think their defense is going to be able to keep them in it. I think that this Oregon offense might struggle early. You might see a weird dogfight in the early part of the game, but I think as Oregon gets the ball more and just puts the Utah defense on its heels more and more, I think they're eventually going to wear down. But for this game, Utah is going to have to find a passing game. I think that if you can attack early with the passing game, get it to second and short, be able to open up the run game, and especially the play action game, I think is going to be where they're most comfortable at if they are able to contend in this game. I think that's the key to victory is being able to open up the play action game, and I think you're gonna have to get some turnovers or just some very good defensive luck because I think Oregon. They're one of the best teams in the country, even though they did lose to Washington. I think we both have them in our top 5 or top 6, whatever it is. We know how good this Oregon team is. I like Utah, man. I've had them. I've been higher on them a lot. I just think it's going to be a really tough game for them to win. And with that, I'm going to go and pick Oregon to win. I think they're just going to be a little bit too much. I'm going to go and pick them 29-16. I think they're going to be able to get away with a really important Pac-12 win, especially on the road.
Yeah, we do both have. I believe we both have Oregon actually at 4 is where we both have them at. So definitely in our top 5s there. But Blake, I'll turn it over to you now. What are your thoughts on this game?
This one certainly going to be an interesting matchup here. I think it's a matchup that favors Oregon pretty heavily, just looking at it immediately. But there's one thing that stands out here, and it's the fact that if Utah wants to win this game, they have to continue with their rush defense, playing at an elite level. Their rushing defense this year, top, I believe, 5, top 6 in the country, allowing not even 3 yards per carry, or maybe right on the number. Sorry, right on the number. They're allowing on average 3 yards per carry. Oregon's rushing attack averaging almost 7 per carry. If we come back and if you just look at the box score of this game and you tell me that Oregon rushes for even 5.5 yards per carry on this one, I think it's going to be pretty easy to say that Oregon's the one that came out on top here. So Utah is going to have to keep their rushing defense playing at that elite level if they want to even stand a chance here, because their offense is not going to keep them in this football game. It's not going to. Their offense showed up pretty well against Southern Cal last week. That's not really much of a feat, I don't think. I think everyone's pretty willing to say that at this point, that Southern Cal defense is about as weak as it can come at this point. Oregon's is not. Oregon's is a stout unit. We talked about it all year long they look almost SEC-like, and the way they're built, they can really hold you down as a defense, and they're going to hold down this Utah offense. And Utah's offense has struggled at times, really, whenever they faced any type of threat defensively. You look back at the Oregon State game, they were completely suffocated. They scored 7 in that one. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was in the back end when that game was kind of already out of reach. Not quite garbage time, but more or less so. It's not a good matchup for the Utes by any means. Oregon, I think, is just the better team outright here. They are more physical, which is impressive to say against the Whittingham team. They're more athletic. They are just more refined as players, and Oregon has a little more riding on the, well, not to say more riding with both of these at 1-loss teams, but I think Oregon has the higher expectations at this point, both nationally and for themselves here. They fancy themselves still to be a contender for the national title, I think. I think they still are, realistically. And I think it's going to show this weekend, because they're going to show up ready to play this game, and they're going to show up ready to win this game, and they're going to win this game pretty handily. I got 38-16 for the Ducks here, taking down the Utes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you here. I just think that the way, like we talked about, the way that this Oregon team is built, Blake really hit the nail on the head with it. They're built like an SEC team. I think that that's a really good description of this team, is that they are built like an SEC team. Very, very solid defense. They've got weapons where they need to have weapons on offense. And when you look at Bo Nix, you look at Troy Franklin, you look at these guys, they're guys that are in, national talks, maybe not at the top of the talks, but they're still up there. And I think all around, I think Oregon is the, Tyler and I have hinted at this in our polls, but we think Oregon's the best team all around in the, in the Pac-12. They're a very stout team. As Blake said, they're still kind of, a national title contender. I agree with that. They are. They've been a very good team this year. I've been very impressed with this team. This team has somewhat exceeded my expectations this year to an extent. I knew that they were going to be good. I just thought that they were going to they had those 2 road games, and in one of those there's 2 road games that I had kind of had my eyes on in the preseason was Washington on the road. I predicted them to lose that initially. I predicted Oregon whenever we did our official picks, and I was wrong with that one, but it went down to the wire. And the other one was this Utah game. I had that game circled for them at the beginning of the year, but the way that things have played out with Utah, with them not having Cam Rising, with them having to, almost start from scratch with the offense, based off of how many injuries that they've had to deal with, I think that they're at a disadvantage in this game. I get it's Rice Eccles. I get that's a tough place to play, but Oregon, just to me right now, is just a better football team, and I think they've got something to prove still. That hey, we're still up there with Washington. Yeah, they beat us head to head, but we could definitely see them again, and we could take them down. And with that being said, I think Oregon wins this game. I think they win this game pretty handily. I got this game 34-14. Give me the Ducks of Oregon in this one, but. Speaking of the Pac-12 and speaking of the state of Oregon, let's talk about the other team located in Oregon, Oregon State, the Beavers. Beavers are having a pretty solid year this year, and they are traveling down to a team that's been very dangerous as of late. The Arizona Wildcats traveling down there to Tucson. Tyler, I'll ask you about this game first. Do we think that Arizona, it's really almost a pick 'em in this game, but do we think Arizona can pull off the quote-unquote upset in this game?
So before I even break down this game has potential to be one of the best games of the weekend, if not the best game of the weekend. Super excited to watch this. Unfortunately, it starts after 10 o'clock on the East Coast, but I will be watching, that's for sure. But to break this one down, I think the biggest issue for both of these teams is who's going to win the rushing battle. Oregon State, obviously very, very good at being able to run the ball, and Arizona very well at defending the rush. So is Arizona going to be able to make Oregon State have to throw the ball? Obviously, when they've done a well enough job to be able to continue downs. But if Arizona can stop the rush and get Oregon State off balance and not do exactly what they want to do, I think it could be an interesting matchup. This game is in Arizona, so going to have the home field. I bet that Arizona crowd is going to be pretty wild and rowdy for what should be a really, really fun game to watch. But Arizona offensively, they've been fine, especially with the backup quarterback in before. Now they're hitting stride. It seemed like when the backup quarterback came in, they actually started to almost improve offensively. I don't know if it was harder effort or whatever happened, but they have been they've been very, very good since probably week 3, week 4 on. Really after that Mississippi State loss in overtime, they have been a very, very good football team. And this game, is Oregon State going to be able to make Arizona have some troubles? Because I don't think Arizona really has had a ton of turnover issues. They've just been very, very clean. So Oregon State defensively, they are a middle of the pack team, I would say. But they are, one of their strengths are the passing game. So Arizona, this is going to be their game to have. This is going to be their shot to call, especially in the Pac-12. They already took that loss to USC, but I think Arizona, I think they're going to have a really good game, and I think that they are going to win this game. I think there's a lot of mixtures going into this game, but I think everything is going to lean Arizona's way, especially I think they're going to be able to make DJ throw the ball, which it hasn't been a bad thing, but obviously I think they want to run the ball, and I think Arizona's going to be able to take that away from them. And with that being said, I have Arizona winning this game If I'm gonna go score prediction, I would go. Um, let's go 30-26. I think it's gonna be a little bit high scoring. I think it's gonna be maybe not exactly how the Washington State game played out, but I think it's gonna be. In a sense where that game is going to be high scoring, and I think it's going to be back and forth, especially at the end. I think it's going to be a very fun game to watch.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points with that there, Tyler, with this game. How fun that this game could be, but I'll turn it over to Blake now. Blake, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I sorry. I've been high on both of these teams all year long. I haven't made much of a or haven't been too quiet about that, especially with Oregon State. I was really high on Oregon State coming into the year. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, they were my preseason Pac-12 favorite there. But I was really high on Arizona coming in too. They came out of the gate a little slow. They ended up making a QB change due to injury. Of course, Delora went down. Fafita's in now. I don't see Fafita giving that job back this year. I don't even know if Delora's on the table to return this year at this point. But regardless of whether he is or not, it seems like that's Fafita's job going forward. He's played really well. He's been impressive. I think his first start against USC, he kind of put everybody on watch with that one. He's played really well since then, though, as well. And that team's been kind of looking like what I expected them to look like in the preseason finally. So what it's going to come down to is which of these teams is going to be able, like Tyler said, to really handle the run better. Oregon State, we know, wants to run the football first. Not much of a question about that, and that offensive line has been great at allowing them to. But Arizona's defense has been borderline top 10 in the country all year against the run. They've shown a really they've been strong against it. That being said, they have not faced a team like Oregon State yet that can run the ball as well as the Beavers can here. They haven't faced a team quite as physical by any means. They've looked good at times. They looked good against those who they've played. But like I said, it just hasn't been quite the level of talent that they've had to face. Of course, they played Washington, but Washington struggled to run the football as well. So. Or at least the level that Oregon State can. So, can Oregon State win the battle on the ground here? I think they can, absolutely. And when it comes time, can DJ put the ball in the air to make a couple of big throws? Because ultimately, I think he's going to have to. Even if and when I think they'll be able to run the football, DJ's still going to have to make some big throws here and there to put this game, away or to put them ahead. I think he can. I've been high on DJ all year. I wasn't real quiet about that either. I thought him teaming up with Jonathan Smith was going to be a great duo there, and he's looked good. He hasn't looked quite as good as I thought he would be. Still looked really, really solid all year long. Hasn't made too many mistakes. A handful here and there certainly, but not bad by any means. So. Can Arizona get ahead? I think it's going to be the big question, though. If Arizona can get ahead early and make DJ throw them back into the game rather than just making a couple of big throws, it's a different story. If Arizona can jump out ahead, certainly you have to lean Arizona in that regard. But I think Oregon State's defense, as strong as they've been all year, they're really finding themselves here at the beginning of the second half stretch. They're experienced. They're good throughout. They're solid. They don't make mistakes defensively too often. They are one of the best units in the Pac-12, and they're finally showing that. They're showing what I expected them to be finally, and for that reason, I'm going to go with the Beavers here. I'm going to take them close. I think it's going to be a close football game. Arizona, with the nature of that offense, is never going to really be out of a game. And they're going to keep it close throughout here. I got 23-21 with the Beavers taking this one and keeping themselves in the Pac-12 hunt right now.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points there, Blake, when it comes to Arizona being against the run and Oregon State obviously being a very run-heavy football team. This is a very stylistic matchup. It's on the road for Oregon State. Obviously, Oregon State's only lost this year. Not that, common opponent theory really matters, but to state this, Oregon State's only loss this year is to Washington State, who Arizona blanked 44-6 a couple weeks ago. absolutely obliterated that football team, and I think that's because Arizona's just finding their own right now. I think that they do have, if they really do limit Oregon State's ability to run the football in this game, and they force Oregon State to pass, I think they could limit them, but I think Oregon State's a lot balanced offense compared to Washington State is. I think Oregon State's a better team, period, than Washington State is. They were just caught playing in Pullman, and that's how things worked out. They couldn't pull out that win, but like we said, they're still in the hunt. Even technically with a loss, they still can be in the hunt, because all that would really matter for them at the end of the season is if they beat Oregon. Even if they lose this game against Arizona, all they really have to do, depending on what else happens around the Pac-12, but all they could, possibly do to get themselves in that Pac-12 championship game is beat Oregon. But it would be a lot nicer to go into that game with one loss in conference. Obviously, looking forward for Oregon State after this game, just to really kind of hint ahead for them. When you look at the Pac-12 schedule, obviously it's super difficult, but they got Washington at home, which is going to be a tough game. Very tough game, obviously. Washington, a top 5 ranked team by AP standards and by Tyler and I's standards in our top 10s. They're a very tough team. And then they got to travel to Oregon, but, at Colorado, that's what that is. And then home against Stanford, obviously that, we know what Stanford is. But when you think about this Oregon State team, if they can get past this test, they will really put themselves into a seat where they have Washington at home, and then they got to travel to Eugene. And if they just even maybe split in that series, they have a decent chance to make the Pac-12 title game. But they got to get past this test first, and this is a very, very tough test because Arizona's a good football team. Arizona's very well-rounded as a football team. They struggled to really figure it out, but I think they're kind of like Kansas State. They're hitting their stride right now. They made some adjustments specifically at the quarterback position, went to a guy who's a backup, and it's worked wonders for them. And I think Arizona's going to be very competitive in this game, but I just think that Oregon State is playing for not that Arizona isn't, but I think Oregon State's playing for just a little bit more, and I think they got a little bit more behind them than Arizona does. I know it's going to be a tough game for Oregon State, but I think that they're gonna grind out this victory. They're gonna figure things out. I've got the Beavers in this one, 27-25, a very, very close ball game on the road, but give me the Beavers in this one. And speaking of teams that we talked about with Washington and Oregon and the Pac-12 possibly being, top contenders this year, let's talk about another team that's a top contender this year, Ohio State, the Buckeyes. Buckeyes really dominated Penn State in the second half last weekend. They're in Columbus, and they're in a position where they could possibly have a letdown game this weekend. Travel to Camp Randall, got to take on Wisconsin, a place that hasn't been too comfortable for the Buckeyes in recent memory. But Wisconsin, without Tanner Mordecai in this game, they're going to have to rely on the run, which is somewhat been a little bit lagging compared to the past 2 or 3, really the past history of Wisconsin football. But they switched up that offense. They've started to run the ball a bit more. But Tyler, do we think that this could be a letdown position for the Buckeyes in the sense that they could get upset this week?
So I think a lot of things are going against Ohio State. I think the fact that, yes, they just did beat Penn State at home. Now they go on the road to a tough environment that they've historically just never really been able to play great in. The last game I can think of was the J.T. Barrett, Alex Hornibrook overtime game. That was a fun game to watch as a Buckeye fan, but just never really played well in Camp Randall. And another thing, is this Ohio State team focused on what's ahead? Because a lot of things happening around the Michigan program. Ohio State has to be looking at it in some way. Whether how much it is and how much they are tuning it out is none of us really know. But I think it's going to be on the eyes of the Ohio State team, and I think that they are going to be locked in for this game. But I think Wisconsin, I think they're going to be pretty good in this game. I think the rush game has been pretty well. Braylon Allen, obviously one of the best running backs in the country, and Braden Locke he's going to have to be able to play a good game here because this Ohio State defense has been very, very good, and we just seen what they did to the Penn State Nittany Lions on Saturday on Big Noon. So it's going to be a big game for Braden Locke. He's probably going to be the guy for the rest of the year. I think Tanner Mordecai broke his hand. I think that was what the injury was. So
Yeah, I believe
and
so.
now when we're talking about Ohio State, we're getting, they're going to be getting Trey Henderson back. They're going to be getting Denzel Burke back. It sounds like, big time players for them. And this Wisconsin team, they're going to be able to have to do both. They're going to have to be able to run and pass the ball. I think they're going to want to run, lean on the run game. That's where Ohio State's been great at. They've been, even last year they were good against the run, and just they really could not get off the field when playing, soft coverage. But this year their pass defense has been great on third downs, and they've been pretty good at stopping the run early on. So that's going to be a big thing I'm going to be looking for is Wisconsin going to be able to push Ohio State back and be able to run the ball and make it easier on Braden Locke at quarterback. That's my biggest issue for this Ohio State team, and I do think this game is going to be close. I think that this game is going to be a 4-quarter game. I don't think a lot of people are seeing it that way because Ohio State, they just beat Penn State. How could this game ever be close? But I think this is going to be a lot closer than what people think. I think this is going to be a 4-quarter game. I do think Ohio State's talent is going to win out at the end. I think that you're going to see that happen a lot this year. I think Ohio State's going to be in a lot of close games this year against anyone they almost play. I think their talent is going to be a little bit too much, and I think they're going to be able to escape with the win here. I think that they do beat Wisconsin, but I'm going to go 25-16. I'm going to take a late score to put them up 2 possessions, but I think it's going to be maybe not an ugly game, but definitely a game where it's kind of just sloppy.
Yeah. So you're predicting the close game. I know Blake and I, funny enough, have the exact same score prediction for this game. So, Blake, I'll get your thoughts, and then I'll add up my thoughts, and we have the same concluding score.
Yeah, where Tyler's concerned about this Ohio State team being maybe not quite focused on, on this week and on the immediate kind of things going on, I'm not. I don't have that concern whatsoever. This Ohio State team, I think, is about as locked in as you can be because they know what they've got right now. They know they've got a team that can easily contend for a national title. This is, to say the best team that Ryan Day has had is maybe a stretch, but it is the team that has the best shot to contend for a title, I think, by far. They feel like they've got, that it factor that teams in the past have, for Ryan Day, have lacked. They also have a defense, that teams in the past for Ryan Day have lacked. They have one of the best defenses in the country. And they're going up against an offense here in Wisconsin that is just not particularly great, to put it plainly. They struggled to find themselves early on in the year. They really lacked an offensive identity. They knew what they wanted to do, but they couldn't quite execute it. And when they finally looked like they were maybe going to start clicking off, at least a little bit better, and maybe they were going to start finding it, they lose, their starting quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, for most of, if not the entire season at this point. Braden Locke having taken over, as Tyler said. Can they rely on the run game against Ohio State? No, they cannot. It's not going to happen. As good as the Wisconsin run game is as good as Braylon Allen is, they're not going to be able to run the football here against Ohio State. Penn State proved last week that it's not an easy task, and I think of that Penn State rushing attack just a little bit higher than I do the Wisconsin rushing attack. Not much, but just slightly. If Wisconsin or if Penn State can't do it, Wisconsin's not going to be able to, I don't believe. Can Wisconsin's defense, becomes the alternate question, can they slow down the Ohio State offense, which has, had its struggles at times? There's potential for it. There certainly is. Luke Fickell, a great defensive mind, has been for a long time. He's got that team playing well defensively. You knew they would. Obviously, Mike Tressel, there calling the defense as well, is one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. I think he is quite impressive. That being said, though, Ohio State's just got more talent offensively than Wisconsin does defensively. To put it pretty bluntly, there, Ohio State's going to move the ball when it matters. They're going to be able to, we'll see if they can run the football or not with the backfield coming back mostly healthy this week, it sounds like. So we'll see if they can find a running game there. I don't think it's going to be explosive by any means, but maybe you can see, slightly improved Ohio State rushing attack. Kyle McCord, I think, has been one of the more, at least overhated players in the nation this year. I think he's been quite a sufficient quarterback for Ohio State. He's made the throws he's needed to make, has not really made too many mistakes. So I think he's gotten a little bit too much hate there, and I think that we're going to see him play a pretty solid game this weekend in Camp Randall. I don't think this game's going to be much issue for Ohio State. I've got it 31-7. We'll see if anything can change here. We'll see if maybe the Wisconsin can find something offensively. I just don't think so. But I will say shout out to the big man Nolan Rucci last week, the offensive tackle with the receiving touchdown for Wisconsin. Maybe we can see that one touchdown they put up this week that I have can be another big man touchdown.
Yeah, I know we kind of all watched. We were watching that game, and we were watching the Minnesota and Iowa game back to back, like together, toward the end of that 3:30 time frame last week. So we all got a good chuckle out of that. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with you here, Blake. I just think that I think this is a letdown spot for Ohio State. I think it kind of will be when you look at the final score, but I think that this team's good. This Ohio State team is built to win a national championship this year. It's just unfortunate that they got to play a certain team from the North at the end of the season. That's also very good and built for a national championship this year. But I think that this team is. And the thing is about this team that Ohio State is, I don't even know if this team has fully hit their stride yet. That's the thing. I think this team still has room for growth, which is crazy to say, but I think it does. Because I agree with Blake. I think Kyle McCord's been a fine quarterback this year. I think he's been just fine in Columbus. I will say he did have a disappointing game against Penn State. He did what he needed to do when he needed to do it, but I thought Ohio State should have won that game against Penn State by 4 touchdowns, in my opinion. I thought that game to me was not competitive in any sense of the ball game, except for the strip sack fumble that was called back. That would have made that game competitive to me. What I watched on television, what I saw in that game was that Ohio State was just a better football team. Period. Simple as that. So I don't know. I think that it's going to be – this game, to me, is going to be very similar for Ohio State to what they did against Purdue 2 weeks ago. On the road, a place where they have not had a fun time in recent years, specifically in night games with Wisconsin. Have to deal with NBC's broadcast this weekend. That's an issue in itself. But I just think Ohio State – also a big thing about this game for Ohio State, they're going to be at full capacity. They beat Penn State and were the better team than Penn State without 3 of their pretty solid starters in Emeka Egbuka, TreVeyon Henderson, and Denzel Burke. Denzel Burke is probably playing like an All-American at cornerback this year, which Ohio State fans are excited about because of what he's dealt with the past really year and a half. TreVeyon Henderson obviously has been dealing with injuries his entire time at Ohio State, but he's who I think is the X factor in this offense. And then, Emeka Egbuka, who's been their slot guy, and they've gone to him a lot this year. But, I think that Ohio State's just going to dominate this game. I get it's a road game. I get it's a night game. I get it's a tough environment, but they're just better than Wisconsin. Like Wisconsin to me is just, I don't know. This team, I expected this team this year. I understood that they switched the offense. I really liked the Tanner Mordecai call, and they still were underperforming when he was the starting quarterback. They could not figure out any really mesh on offense, and that's a problem to me. And I think part of that reason is because of the way that this team's built. It's honestly the way that this team is built. It's kind of like, as Blake said, kind of similar. If Penn State can't run the football on you, how's Wisconsin going to run the football on you? I think this team's very similarly built to Penn State in some aspects when they're at full capacity. When you look at Mordecai, obviously he's not going to be in this game. So I don't know if Wisconsin's going to be able to even throw the football in this game. So then they have to run the football. And last year we saw what that offense was with Wisconsin when they tried to run the football against an Ohio State defense that was not nearly as good as it is this year. Wisconsin didn't do jack in that game last year, and I don't think that they're going to do anything really on Saturday. I think this game is the score is not going to look like it's a dominating game, but I think Ohio State is just absolutely going to dominate this football game over Wisconsin. I think they're going to start off sluggish. I think they're going to start off slow. It's going to be an ugly first half, but they're going to really hit that third quarter where it's been this year, where they're just going to sit there. The defense is going to keep them in the game, but I think they're going to start off slow. It might be like a 14-3, well, I guess maybe because of my score prediction I can't say that, but 14-0 halftime game. and then Ohio State just absolutely turns it on the burners in the second half. But I have this game also 31-7. I think the Buckeyes handle business. They go to Camp Randall. It's a business trip for them. They want to make sure, this isn't a letdown game for us. We are a national title contender this year, and I think they're going to prove that to some aspects this weekend over the Badgers. So I got Ohio State in that one, as I said. But now to a ranked-on-ranked matchup by AP standards. I know it's really the only other one besides that Oregon-Utah game that's a ranked-on-ranked matchup by AP standards. It's not by Tyler and I standards when we put out our top 25s, but Duke takes on Louisville. This is an interesting matchup. It's in Louisville. Louisville still only one loss in conference this year, that being to Pitt. They did beat Notre Dame at home. They only have, as mentioned, one loss on the season, but Duke now 2 losses on the season, one to Notre Dame, and one to Florida State last weekend, where Riley Leonard once again went down with an injury, and it looks like he's going to be out for this game against Louisville with that ankle injury that he's been dealing with. But Tyler, I think we all kind of think this game is going to be a slugfest, a rock fight, as some say nowadays. But who do you think comes out on top in this one?
So this game is odd because I feel like a lot of these programs had a ton of momentum, and they don't really have a ton, going for them right now, but they're still, both of them are sitting at one loss in conference, and this is going to be a massive game for who can advance in the ACC, because obviously we're taking the top 2 teams, and North Carolina just lost. Florida State is the only team that is spotless. Clemson and Miami are out of the picture right now, with 2 losses. It's a really odd game because this game I don't feel like has enough eyes on it, but this is a massive and crucial game for the ACC and who could possibly be going to the conference championship, especially with how Louisville's schedule sets up. I think they win this game and they have a very, I'm not going to say easy path, because we've seen anything can happen in this conference. North Carolina, who we both had as the best team last week, just lost to probably one of the worst teams in the entire Power 5, if not country, in Virginia, and pretty convincingly. Anything can happen in this conference, but big thing I want to look for is defensively, points per Eckel. Eckel rate is how a team creates quality possessions and the actual conversion of those possessions. And defensively, Louisville is 110th in the country and Duke is 20th in the country. That means Duke is putting more points up on quality possessions that they create up than Louisville is. And I think that this game is going to be a defensive slugfest. I think this game is going to be a little bit low scoring. And with that, happening, I think, I don't know if Riley Leonard is going to be playing in this game, especially with his injury last week. I'm going to assume not. But I think this game is going to be close. I think this game is going to be interesting. I think that Louisville has the better offense, especially in this game, but I think Duke's defense is for real. I think Duke's offensive line is going to be for real. I think they're going to be able to give Henry Bellin, if he is playing, some good opportunities to be able to make some plays downfield. And this game is at Louisville. It's going to be a tough game for Duke, especially losing in a 4-quarter game with Florida State that was on the road. Now they got to come back. They got to bounce back right against Louisville, and I think that they're going to be able to do it. I think this defense is going to be able to get some points, if maybe not points, but I think this defense is going to be able to put them in a good spot. I think the offensive line is going to be able to get the running game going for Duke. I think that they'll be able to run the ball at a semi-decent rate. Louisville, they are pretty good against the rush, so that was going to be an interesting matchup to see, but I do think that Louisville offensively, they're going to want to pass the ball quite a bit. And I think the secondary for Duke, I think it's going to be experience. I think they're going to be able to limit the passing game quite well. And I'm going to go ahead and pick Duke. I'm going to go 17-16, a really close game. This game could go either way. I think that we're all pretty torn on it. But for me, I'm going to go with the Blue Devils.
So you talked about us all being torn on it. I'll turn it over to Blake now. With possibly a different outcome.
Yeah, so where last week when we talked about the Duke Florida State game, I said that I didn't think, well, at the time I said, number one, I didn't think Riley Leonard would play that game. And number two, I said that even if he did play, I didn't think it would make much of a difference. Obviously, he did play. They looked good when he played. They ended up losing that game after he went down with injury. We don't know whether him staying healthy would have changed the outcome or not in that game. I'm going to kind of change my tune this week, though, and say that they're Riley Leonard playing may be the decisive factor in this game. And Riley Leonard's health status may be the decisive factor in this game. If Riley Leonard does not play, or if a banged up Riley Leonard plays this game, it's going to be pretty tough for Duke to come out on top here. And right now, it seems pretty up in the air whether we'll see him or not. And frankly, if we do, it's pretty hard to believe that he's going to be playing at 100% or really even near 100 after last week's events. So Duke runs the football well. We know they do. Louisville runs the football well. We know they do. Which team's going to stop the run is the first question here. Louisville's been a really impressive defense against the run. Better than I think most people would have expected them to be. They've shown a pretty impressive line there. So if they're going to be able to shut down the run for Duke here, especially without Riley Leonard, which is, I'm going to tell you, that's my lean here, is that he's not going to play. And if he does play, he's not going to play at a level where he's going to be able to be, a big factor in the run game. If this is the case, Louisville's defense is going to probably be able to tee off on that Duke run game to a pretty, significant extent, which is going to mean can Belen put the ball through the air to win that football game for Duke? Because, what this game, I think this game is going to come down to, like I said, it's the run games and who's going to be able to stop the runs. I think both teams can, which is going to mean who's going to put the ball through the air a little better is kind of the odd way I've taken to get to this point. Who's going to put the ball in the air better here is going to win this football game. Because I think both defenses are going to have a pretty good day against the rush attack. Louisville, I think, is going to see better rushing success than Duke will, but I don't think it's going to be enough to win the football game. It's going to come down to who throws the ball better, Belen versus Plummer. I trust Plummer, and I trust Louisville's pass attack a lot more than I trust, Belen at the backup QB position here for Duke. Yes, Duke's secondary has been impressive. Duke's pass defense in general has been really impressive all year long. It's a good unit. It's just not going to be good enough, I think. You come off a tough loss there last week. You have to go to Louisville this week. And, playing without your starting quarterback, if this becomes the case, deflates a football team to an extent. It's a situation spot, I think, more than anything. It's a situation spot mixed with an injury spot for Duke. It's just not a good matchup for them in that regard. Football-wise, I feel like it is probably a pretty solid matchup. But when you're talking about college football, so much of it becomes down to situation. That's what it was with Louisville and Notre Dame, 4 weeks ago, however long ago it was now. It was a situation spot when I picked Louisville in that one. It was Notre Dame coming off some tough losses and a tough win in there. It's the same spot for Duke. They're going to have to go into Louisville just like Notre Dame did. Not the night game. No longer an undefeated Louisville either, but Louisville's still playing for an ACC title spot. Obviously, Duke is as well with only one conference loss here. As Tyler said, this is what it's going to come down to, potentially deciding a ACC title game team here. This is a long way to say I'm taking Louisville here. I just think that the situation matchup is just better for them. I've got a 19-17 low-scoring affair here, points at a premium. But I just think Louisville's got the better situation than Duke is going into this one.
Yeah. You bring up a good point there when it comes to who's going to have more success in the pass game in this one. And I bring up a different thing for this game. I think of all around, who do I think is a better football team in this ballgame? I get situations, obviously have an effect on certain games. And have an effect on certain teams. Obviously, Duke is without. We're going to assume here that Riley Leonard is not going to play. Or, as Blake said, if he does play, he's not going to be 100%, which is going to be a concern for Duke. Because if you look back to their game 2 weeks ago against NC State, when Berlin was in the game, I believe he threw 12 passes and completed like 5 of them or something like that. They did not throw the football. And even when he was in the game against Florida State, I think I saw a stat late in the fourth quarter of that game before I ended up clicking off of that game, was that since Riley Leonard went down, they had 3 yards of offense. That's a problem that Duke has. And they're going to have to do it against Louisville. And I mean, that's a tough sense. That's a tough game to do. But, and it sounds like I'm going to pick Louisville in this game, but I have my concerns with that team too. I mean, Jack Plummer is, he played he's good for what he needs to be. Obviously, they have that pass game and his connection there out on the outside that kind of shined in that, Notre Dame game that kind of showed off there. But, when you look at Louisville, when you look at this team, I think they're a decently built football club. Like I said, with Jack Plummer, with Jamari Thrash at wide receiver, their connection. But I just think that Duke is a better all-around built team. I understand that they're not going to be without Riley Leonard, but I think they're just going to be able to – I think their defense is better than Louisville's. And I think, as Tyler mentioned, it's going to create some problems for Jack Plummer, and it's going to give Duke good field position where they're going to have to benefit off of it. And I think that's what we're going to see in this ball game, is that Duke's going to use their good field position and they're going to get points off of it, while Louisville, is going to have to do a bit more on offense. I think that's going to be, obviously you can't predict turnovers, but you can predict maybe field position. I think that Duke is going to set up Louisville, in positions where they're going to be inside their own 20 for offensive possessions and then force them to punt from inside their own 20. And I think Duke's they're going to take advantage of that. They're going to take advantage of good field position. I think that defense is going to clamp down. I'm going to go Duke in this one, 17-13 over Louisville. I got the Blue Devils in this one. Should be an interesting matchup. But another one that we had up on the docket this weekend, moving to the Big 12 now, big noon game this weekend. Oklahoma takes on Kansas. Oklahoma, in a bit of a letdown game last weekend against UCF, escaped that one due to a lack of play calling from UCF's part on a 2-point conversion. But Oklahoma escaped with a victory. That's all that really matters. And this week they take on Kansas. Kansas still without Jalen Daniels. We got an update right as we were in the beginning of this recording that Daniels will not be active, so they're going to go with good old Jason Bean again. Kansas coming off of a loss on the road to Oklahoma State. Now they have Oklahoma in front of their home crowd. Tyler, what are we thinking for this game?
So, yeah, like you said, Jalen Daniels, once again, not going to be suiting up for the Kansas Jayhawks, which is going to be a big loss for them, because Jalen Daniels is a fantastic football player, but he just, for whatever reason, he cannot stay on the field. He cannot stay healthy. And I think that's not going to really, it is going to affect Kansas, but I think I think this is a really good football team, and I think that this is going to be a game where you're going to see them look very good against a Kansas team who I think is vastly, I'm not going to say overrated, but I think a lot of people think that they are a fringe top 25 team-ish. I think that this team is, closer to 40 to 50 in the country, and I think there's a big difference between that fringe between, the fringe top 25 and, top 40, 50 in the country. And I think that Oklahoma is going to put a beat down on Kansas. I think that this defense is going to have a field day. I think this defense is really going to have a fantastic game. I'm not going to say, turnovers or whatever, but I think this is going to be an eye opener for Kansas, because Kansas, they played a lot better than what I expected against Texas. But I think Oklahoma is about to do some things that we haven't seen from them this year. And I think the offense is going to have a good day. I think Kansas' defense is just not good enough. 93rd against the pass EPA against the rush 77th, echo rate 117th. They're just not creating opportunities for themselves. And I think with that being said, I think Oklahoma, one of the best passing games in the country, led by Dylan Gabriel. I think this team, they're going to be explosive. I think this is going to be the game that Oklahoma kind of needs to open people's eyes and see the potential past the Texas game. I think a lot of people look at that Texas game, they look at everything else, and they're like, well, Oklahoma, are they that good? I think this is going to be a game where a lot of people are going to fall onto the Oklahoma bandwagon. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pick, it sounds closer. I'm going to go 34-17, but I think this game is going to be a lot more spread out than that. I think we're going to get some late scoring from Kansas, and I think this is an Oklahoma team who is going to take their time being explosive. I think they're going to be able to kind of do whatever they want whenever they want. And with that being said, I think the Sooners are going to have a big day.
So you're going with Oklahoma big. I'll turn it over to you now, Blake. What are you thinking for this ball game?
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty short and sweet with this one, I think. I think Tyler hit the nail on the head there, especially at the end where he said Oklahoma will do kind of whatever they want whenever they want to this Kansas team. Kansas is just not going to match up to this Oklahoma team at all. Their defense has been suspect at best, and that's not good enough against what has been, one of the top offenses in the country against Oklahoma. They've had their moments where they've struggled to run the football, but even then, they can still run it with enough effectiveness, I should say. And against this Kansas, I don't think they're gonna have much issue even doing that. Jalen Daniels being out, yeah, certainly unfortunate. Doesn't really make much of a difference here. I don't think. I don't think he was gonna, you know, uh, make a 21, 28 point swing for the Jayhawks here, which is, kind of giving you a hint of what I think this game's going to look like. He just wasn't going to be enough. Their offense isn't going to be able to match up to the Oklahoma defense either, with it being one of the best units in the country. Kansas, good offensively, sure, just not to that level, not to a level where they were going to match up here really whatsoever. So unfortunate that it's going to have to that I have it going, as one sided as I do, but I just don't think it's a great matchup for the Jayhawks here, and with Oklahoma coming off of that close game against UCF, maybe you see a little bit of an inspired performance, or at least a bounce back game where they just kind of put their foot down early and say we're gonna go ahead and take this game and show you what we can, or remind you what we can do. I got it 45-14 Oklahoma. I don't think Kansas scores much. I think they get scored on a lot. That's just the short and sweet of it. It's just not going to be a very pretty game for the Jayhawks this week.
Yeah, there's you definitely bring up some good points there with this game, but I'm gonna switch a little bit on this game comparative to you guys. I have a similar score because of the information that has come out, because I think Jalen Daniels being hurt in this game does make a difference. I think that makes I don't think it makes, as Blake said, I don't think it makes a 28-point difference, but I think it makes, maybe a 10-point, 14-point difference in this ball game. I was going to pick Oklahoma regardless of this game, just a little insight here, but I was going to pick Oklahoma close. I was going to pick them 27-22 because I thought Daniels was going to play. Well, obviously that's not happening, so I switched a little bit here, in this game, but, Daniels, to me, what I think he's a bit of an, I think he's a very solid quarterback when it comes to college football. I don't think he's, I think that he's does a lot more for that Kansas offense, because obviously when you look at in the past couple of weeks, they have struggled mightily because he hasn't been in the lineup. I mean, the Texas game, when he was out in that game, yeah, they kept it close with Texas for about a half, but then Texas dominated the second half because Bean doesn't really, he's played for him the past 2 years, but Bean doesn't compare to Daniels in my opinion. I think Daniels brings a little more oomph in that Kansas offense, and I think if he were to play, I think Kansas is going to play a little inspired in this game because they're coming off a loss on the road, coming back at home. Obviously they're sitting in a position where they're probably like, yeah, they're not in the greatest position to make the Big 12 championship game with a loss in this game. So they're sitting there and they're saying, we got to win this game to keep our hopes alive. But I think because they're not going to have Daniels, that's going to be a problem for them. I think that they're going to I think Kansas is going to play a little, like I said, inspired in this game. I think Oklahoma will also be playing a little bit inspired after, like I said, the letdown game against UCF. But, having to travel to Kansas, I just think with Daniels out, it's going to make a difference, and that's why I switched up my score a bit to what I had. I initially had this one 27-22 Oklahoma, but like I said, switched it up. Daniels is going to be out, so I'm going to go 37-20 in this one. I'm still rolling with the Sooners. I still think Oklahoma, regardless, was going to win the game. I just thought that Kansas, being at full potential and being healthy would make a bit of a difference, but obviously that's not the case, so therefore I'm going Oklahoma a bit bigger by 17 in this game. Give me the Sooners in this one, and let's now. We said that this was a pretty top heavy slate, if you can even say that. It's a bit of a weaker slate this week. So we have a bit of an interesting pick coming up next, and this one is we're gonna go FCS here. We have a top 10 matchup in the FCS this weekend. Sticking in the Midwest, I will say, sticking toward the Great Plains of the country. we've got South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, traveling this weekend. The number one ranked team in FCS, for those of you that do not know. They're I believe the only undefeated team in the FCS as it stands right now. South Dakota State travels to South Dakota this weekend. It is a 1-9 matchup according to the FCS polls. When you look at the coaches' polls, South Dakota State is ranked number 1, and South Dakota is ranked 9 in the FCS coaches poll. So it'll be an interesting matchup here when you look at these teams overall ranked. But we're just going to go. We're not really going to break this one down. We're just going to pick this one real quick for fun, and I'll turn it over to you, Tyler. What's your pick in this game?
So, quick hitter on this. South Dakota State is currently on a 21-game win streak, which is tied for 8th longest in FCS history. This game is playing at South Dakota. Going to be a cold game. It's going to be about 30 degrees. It's going to be snowing maybe. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pick South Dakota to get the upset. I think they're going to snap that winning streak, and I think that the Coyotes are going to have a field day.
So you're going with the Coyotes this one, South Dakota. I'll turn it over to you now, Blake. What's your quick thought in this game?
Yeah, South Dakota, great team. South Dakota, good team here, top 10 in the FCS. South Dakota State, much better team, defending national champions, obviously. This is Jimmy Rogers' first year as the head coach of the Jackrabbits, so his first game as a head coach. And this big time rivalry here. He's been around the program a long time though. Played at South Dakota State, so not his first experience here, but his first time getting to be the head coach for this affair. I'm going to go with the Jackrabbits. I think it's going to be a good game maybe, but I think South Dakota State's just going to be too good, and I'm going to take them 26-8 here to take down the Coyotes.
So you're going with the Jackrabbits, and I'm going to agree with you here, Blake. I'm going with South Dakota State. They're one of the best FCS programs. Obviously, any Dakota State team, actually any Dakota team, period, is very solid in their FCS programs. When you look at North Dakota State, North Dakota, South Dakota, and South Dakota State, they're all very, very solid programs. Everybody up there in, that area of the country, including a little bit west, when you look at even Montana, is very, very solid when you look at them, as well as Montana State. That's a great area of the country when it comes to FCS football, but I'm going with the Jackrabbits in this one. We had a little fun there going a little FCS, so let's keep the fun rolling, folks. For those of you that are not aware, all three of us are from Macland, and we have a bit of a poll in a certain game this weekend, because when you look at your calendars and you look at what's on CBS Sports Network at 3:30 this weekend, it's the Battle of the Bricks, folks. It's Miami of Ohio taking on the Bobcats of Ohio. Obviously, Tyler and I are the Ohio guys. Blake is the Miami guy. I know all three of us were going to actually be in attendance at this game, but one of us had to dip out a little late because of it. But two of us will probably be in attendance for this game. It should be a fun one. Battle of the Bricks, as I said. I know both these teams, it's also got a bit bigger of implications for those of you that haven't kept up with the group of five this year. Toledo beat Miami last weekend, but that now puts it as both Miami. I believe Miami and Ohio now both have one loss when it comes to MAC play as it currently stands. So they're coming into this ball game. Both of them are in the MAC East, and the winner of this game is likely going to win the MAC East. The way that things are playing out. It's going to be a very, very interesting game, but we kind of were keeping an eye on what things happened in that Toledo game last weekend. But Tyler, I'll turn it over to you first. What are your thoughts on this game?
So this game is going to be fun. I am unfortunately the one dipping out of this game. I had some things coming up Saturday night, so had to stay in Columbus. But to be fair, I am the only, neutral party of this. I did go to OU, but currently not there. But Blake graduated from Miami, and obviously you are going to graduate after this year. So I am the neutral party of this. But when it comes to this game, I lean one side, and it has to be Ohio. I will never pick the Red Bricks of this sport, and I'm going to go and pick OU. I think that the passing game is going to be able to find an option. Obviously, Jacoby Jones went out with a season-ending injury, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I think that this is going to be the week that they're going to be able to find the passing game. Miami, Ohio, coming in without Brett Gabbert, going to be Avion Smith. Going to be interesting to see how Miami does. I think defensively, OU, one of the best teams in the country. I guess based off of some basic stats, but still, really good defense. I think this defense might be the best in the MAC. And with that being said, I'm going to go low scoring, but it's somehow our highest scoring game of the predictions out of us three. I'm going to go OU cover 23-14. They beat Miami.
So you're going with the Bobbies in this one, Blake. Obviously, I got to turn it over to you here. What are your thoughts on this game, being the, I guess, opposing party in this one?
Yeah, the lone Red Hawk here. Obviously, as I said, I'm a Miami alum, so certainly some bias here for me. This is the one team that you'll hear me put my bias towards in predictions. Probably, it was a tough game last week to lose at home against Toledo. There, lose Brett Gabbert for the season, and his career in college has come to a pretty unfortunate conclusion there with a pretty bad injury. Things you hate to see that. Good guy, so yeah, you hate to see it come to an end like that. But we'll roll forward with the Aviator, Avion Smith, taking the helm for the rest of the season. This is his team now. You would imagine going forward because he's got a couple years of eligibility left. So you imagine this is his team, for the rest of this year and beyond. He played a lot last year when Brett went down in the opener. He came back about midseason and went back down again. So Avion saw plenty of time last year. By no means is he an inexperienced quarterback. Different style of quarterback, certainly, though, not quite the precision passer that Brett has been all year long, but still can put the ball through the air to a decent enough level and can do a little more on the ground. We'll see if Miami pushes to a more zone read style offense. I would imagine you'll see a little more of that with Avion there now. Maybe some more quick hitters out to Gage and others, but we will see. Chuck Martin, obviously, moving over to call the offense this year as well. When Avion was the quarterback last year, due to Brett's injury, Chuck Martin was not calling the offense. So we'll see what kind of a different look we see this year in that regard, with Chuck now calling Avion at the helm of it. So yeah, I'm gonna go Miami. I'm just gonna tell you the truth. Maybe it's just the bias. It probably is. It's a tough spot to be in, but I'm gonna go low scoring game. I'm gonna take the Redhawks 20-14.
So you got to go with Miami in this one, obviously, but I have to. I got to go with the Bobbies. I have to go with the Bobbies in this one. We're at home. It's for those that are not aware of Halloween weekend and the allure of it in Athens, Ohio. It is definitely something. There's going to be, I don't know if there'll be a lot of people at the game, but there's going to be a lot of people in town this weekend. I know I also have one of my good friends that attends Miami. He'll be in town and we'll be watching the game. But this is I mean, I got the lowest score of this one, and it's crazy that I got the lowest score in this one. But if you had asked me last year, I would have said that this prediction would have been outside of anybody's mind. But the way that these teams have shaped up this year, I've actually kept a decent eye on them, obviously with Ohio. But Bobcats have like one of the, as Tyler said, maybe one of the best, maybe the best defense in the MAC. This defense has been very, very solid this year for Ohio. It's done what it's needed to do. It's been there, and it's shut down many different teams this year. And obviously with Miami having to roll with the backup quarterback, and Smith, and not Gabbert, that might make a bit of a difference. But OU's offense this year has just been, compared to last year. Last year, that's what this team was known for, was its offense. They had the Ohio State transfer, Sam Wiglusz, who was the slot receiver, had a great year last year. As Tyler mentioned, Jacoby Jones, he was a good weapon on the outside last year. And obviously C.A. Bangura in the backfield. They had him, and all three of those came back. But the main guy that was a big issue for him down the stretch of the season last year was an injury to quarterback Curtis Rourke. And Curtis Rourke was arguably the best quarterback in the MAC last year. Him and Finn from Toledo were really probably the top two, and we were robbed of seeing that matchup up in Detroit last year. But I think that this game is going to be super low scoring because Curtis Rourke this year has really kind of struggled to figure things out. I don't know if it's because he hasn't really bounced back from the injury yet. He had an injury in week 1 that, maybe could have cost Ohio a win in that game against San Diego State on the road, or week 0 actually is what it was, week 0. But, I think that they've just struggled to find their footing offensively. Whether any single, flip of the coin. Obviously, the MAC is very unpredictable. The MAC is probably the most unpredictable conference in the country besides maybe the ACC when you look at FBS conferences. But, I got to go with the Bobcats here. I got to go with them. I think the defense is going to shine. I think they're going to – maybe a defensive touchdown makes a difference in this game, but I'm going to go with the Bobcats in this one. I got it 13-7. Yes, that low of a score. I've got Ohio in this one over Miami. I think it's going to be a really interesting football game to watch, and I am definitely hyped for that. But that really ends our full breakdowns of picks of the week. So now it's time for the upset picks of the week. Tyler, I'll ask you first. What is your upset pick of this week?
So last week, I almost picked North Texas over Tulane. North Texas ended up losing by a touchdown, but this week, I think they're going to be playing a little bit better of a team, which is crazy to say because they're playing Rice. Rice is at home, 10.5-point favorites against ranked Tulane. I'm going to go ahead and pick Food to win.
So you're going with Rice in this one, as you said there. Blake, I'll turn it over to you now. What is your upset pick of the week?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with kind of a bold pick here. We know it's Cocktober. We are all believers in Cocktober, although Cocktober has looked like it's been Cocktober for a lot of this month, especially with some of the things with Shane Beamer breaking his foot and so forward. But they get A&M this weekend, and I'm going to take the upset here. The Gamecocks over A&M at Kyle Field, actually. This A&M team and how it's going kind of it's given me a lot of memories of 2021 Florida, who came out of their bye week and got ran by Georgia, although a good Georgia team that went on to win the title that year. They got ran in that one, and they fell apart at the seams. A&M obviously coming out of their bye week this week, a 3-loss team. I am pretty concerned that things might go off the rails here for the Aggies. And if this game ends up being the upset that I'm picking here, I'm going to make another statement that if this upset comes to fruition, it will probably be the last game we see Jimbo Fisher on the sidelines for Texas A&M.
Yeah, that definitely could happen this weekend, but if Blake's upset prediction comes true, we'll have to see. My upset prediction is about another coach. I don't know if he's on the hot seat yet, but he's quickly approaching. And I'm going to go with a team that I kind of hinted on possibly getting upset, in our recap of Week 8, and that's USC. I'm going to go Cal over USC this weekend. Cal is an 11-point dog at home against USC. USC obviously coming off of 2 really bad losses in a row, and it really doesn't get much easier because Cal has had a very good offense this year. And, they've kind of, been able to score like a good amount this year, and I think that if you get yourself into a shootout with USC, anything can happen, and I think it could happen. I'm going to go with Cal with this one this week. Like I said, I don't think it's out of the picture that USC can finish 6-6. I'm going to say it, I'm going to stick with it, and that's what I'm going with for my upset pick of the week. But that'll be all for this episode of the Orbit Football Podcast. For Blake, for Tyler, this is Cade signing off.